Chase Thomas podcast. My nephew needs me to record. See, I already hate it. I hate it.
All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chase Thomas Podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, Everything School HQ. Joining me, Rocky Top Insider's own Ryan Schumpert. Ryan, good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well. I just heard off air a harrowing tale of how Chase battled the alligators like he was Travis Stevens in the swamp in 2001, and I think I've gained a newfound respect for our fearless leader here on this podcast.
I was doing the math here because I was like, you with Travis Stevens in 2001. I was like, was that 2001? It actually no, it was I guess 2003. 2003, so not long after the 2001. So maybe that was the inspiration for me. Travis Stevenson's heroics in 2001. But yeah, hey, there's look, Isle of Palms. Stay ready. You never know what you're going to encounter around the Isle of Palms. Great resort, not a sponsor, could be. Ryan Schumpert, we have a lot to get to here on this Monday night edition of the program. Tennessee clinches. Did you hear about this? Did you hear about this? Ryan Schumpert, Tennessee Volunteers clinched a college football playoff spot in all likelihood, that we'll know for sure here tomorrow night. But what are you still thinking about 48 hours removed from Tennessee taking care of Vanderbilt 36-23 in Nashville?
You know, I have a reputation as a negative guy, so I guess I'll just continue that on. I'm thinking,
oh, no.
How in the world did Vanderbilt win 6 games? Like, and look, where Ryan was wrong. I sat here last week. I think we did a podcast last week, if not on the RTI podcast, and said I thought it'd be a good game. And Tennessee certainly, after the first 5 minutes and definitely the first quarter, played well. But Vanderbilt's defensive backfield was so slow. The offense really matched the numbers that Vanderbilt's offense had, and I guess that's probably the answer. That it just took a while for people to figure out Vanderbilt's offense. But Vanderbilt's offense was largely lifeless in this game. I mean, they could run the ball decently, but there's no splash plays. So I think that's the thing that stood out the most to me. Like, if you had told me after the first 5 minutes that it would be a drama-free win for Tennessee, I'd have been shocked. So I guess I say all that to say it's somewhere balancing the success Tennessee had creating some chunk plays in this game offensively, and some success they had in the passing game, with the fact that I don't think Vanderbilt's secondary, and I specifically don't think Vanderbilt's pass defense is any good, because they really don't have any pass rush. And there were some times when Dont'e Thornton was running down the field, Vanderbilt's secondary was reminding me of the speed of the 2012 Tennessee secondary. So I guess that's when you talk specifically Tennessee, it's kind of trying to balance, all right, how much better do I feel about the passing game with how much of it I think this was just a very bad Vanderbilt pass defense that Tennessee was able to exploit.
I think there's some truth to that, but I also think there is a truth to that was a kind of I don't want to say a breakthrough, because on one hand, and I kind of wrote about this today and yesterday, was just that, like, you and we talked about it on last week's pod of, look, everyone's been so zoned in on Nico and what Nico's going to be, Dylan Sampson, the Doak Award. Week to week, I'm just looking at the injury report and what Dont'e Thornton's availability has been like. I'm checking Dont'e Thornton's snap counts. Dont'e Thornton is kind of that. He's not a cherry on top to this offense rolling. I think he's just kind of quietly the X factor, because part of what I just think when you see games like this on Saturday where Tennessee comes roaring back, they came roaring back because of the downfield attack with Dont'e Thornton and his 86-yard touchdown play. He had 3 catches in this game, 2 went for 6. It's pretty good. He's averaging 25 yards a reception this season. He has 6 touchdowns on 25 receptions as a whole. This is what separates this Tennessee offense and kind of like affects their ceiling, because I understand the Dylan Sampson stuff, and I've said this for the last couple weeks, is like 2 things can be true. Dylan Sampson can be having the best season of any Tennessee running back in the 21st century, and also and Matt posed this question to me last night, and I think I'd be curious to get your perspective on this, because I think we'll be aligned here, but I could be wrong, that He's like, if I had told you before the year that Tennessee's Dylan Sampson was going to have the kind of season that he had, and Tennessee's defense was going to have the kind of defense it had, and I didn't tell you anything about the offense, what would you have thought the record was going to be? Like, you would have thought this team would have been like undefeated, or this offense would have been the best. And this is like a really, really elite team if those two things were true. And I was like, I don't think so, because I think Dylan Sampson's numbers are a reflection of where the passing game is. And Dylan Sampson in Tennessee is the second best second half rushing team in college football this year, behind only Army. And part of that is Dylan Sampson's second half heroics. I mean, Dylan Sampson's averaging over 5 yards to carry on so many carries this season. His durability and consistency are all great. But you saw on Saturday like when you are in this hole where Tennessee gives up a 100-yard kickoff return for a touchdown, they fumble early in the game to put themselves in a 14-0 hole. Tennessee doesn't win this game without Dont'e Thornton. I don't think they come back. I don't think they have the juice out wide to make up that kind of ground. And I think you just see that level of like, it doesn't have to be Jalen Hyatt and 5 touchdowns against Alabama stuff, but you do need the Jalen Hyatt and the kind of stuff that Tennessee did against Kentucky in 2022. That has to be more common than what we've seen the last 2 years. It's not the Alabama game offensively for Tennessee. It's closer to what Kentucky did, where you have in 2022 with the dark mode, where you just need a couple big plays. You just need 2 to 3 explosive touchdowns through the air, like some big plays, and then everything else. And then you just feel fine, because I think even Kentucky this year, where the Nimrod drop and who was the other big drop? Was it Squirrel? I don't even remember now. Brazel. 2 touchdowns, and we look at that game completely differently because Nico has 400 yards. He has multiple touchdowns in that game, and it's just a different feel for this offense. And I think that's my takeaway, is that Dont'e Thornton is the most important player on this Tennessee offense. And if Tennessee wants to make a deep run in the college football playoff, Dont'e Thornton has to be healthy, and Dont'e Thornton has to get the ball. Like, when Dont'e Thornton gets the ball, good things happen, and this team and this offense specifically can score 30-plus points. This is their highest scoring point total in SEC play, and a lot of that was because Dont'e Thornton had 2 touchdowns, and the Tennessee passing attack down the field in particular was the best it's been in SEC play. And that is the difference. It's like, this offense will always be able to run the football. Dylan Sampson, whether or not he's here next year or not, Deshaun Bishop, Peyton Lewis, Dwan Morris, whoever is back there, they're going to run the football well. Like, this was a top 25 rushing attack in 2022, but what separated 2022 was the passing attack. And the best version of Tennessee still has to come from elite quarterback play and at least one receiver who puts a lot of fear in defenses and can stretch the field vertically in a way that can have the kind of 86-yard big plays when you dig yourself in a hole like Tennessee did early on in that game. I can't say enough and emphasize enough about how much Tennessee's fortunes this year come down to Dont'e Thornton and his ability to get the ball.
Okay, you said a lot. I agree with most all of it. I agree with Dont'e Thornton. He's the only guy that seems to strike fear in opposing defenses. I mean, I'd love to just go down the list and see the 25-plus yard pass plays that Tennessee's had this year and how many of them are Dont'e Thornton, because it feels pretty radical. How many of them have been him. Certainly Squirrel's had a couple. Bruce had a couple. I can't hardly remember any for Brazel, honestly.
And Brazel had an okay day on Saturday. Best we've seen in a while.
Yeah, he did. And especially when you consider it with the Thornton big plays aspect, especially when you consider it with the number of snaps he gets. Like, it just feels like he's the only guy that has a lot of juice in that receiver room and can take the top off the defense. And, look, he was open on the ball that Nico severely underthrown and was intercepted on. Really the only mistake or bad play or one of the few bad plays in Nico's day. So I completely agree with that.
Anyway.
Yeah, well, also credit to Dont'e Thornton. Great tackle. Saved 25 yards, 30 yards on the return, and then Vanderbilt got flagged for something too, which, especially made it a punt because he had 15 more yards. So agree with that. The one thing I would disagree with you on is I think Tennessee still would have won, even if Dont'e Thornton, didn't play.
I think it'd be a lot closer. I think that's a game in the fourth quarter. Yeah.
Closer, yes. I think Tennessee still would have scored on their first touchdown drive. I mean, it's a 28-yard slant. And I mean, that one was obviously Thornton deserved credit for it, but he was wide open. Whereas the second one's the one's different. I'm not sure which other Tennessee's receivers had the speed to win the race to the corner and take that, whatever it was, 10-yard pass, 15-yard pass.
I mean, it's probably Brazel and that's it, but even still, like, we haven't seen that from Brazel all year long, so counting on it to be him in that spot is...
Yeah, for sure. And then the question you had posed, or Matt had posed to you, and you posed to me, completely agree. That I thought Tennessee would have been good, but all about the defense and very little about Dylan Sampson's numbers. And I think, and obviously I don't have the numbers in front of me. I haven't run them. I do think Tennessee has run the ball better this season. I don't think it's been dramatic this season. I just think you have one running back getting the vast majority of the yards. Where the last 3 years, it's been 2 to 3 guys that have gotten a ton of yards, and they've combined for it. So I think that would have been my assumption more than anything. That's like, all right, either people behind
they
Dylan
were 10th
Sampson got
nationally
hurt.
in rushing last year. Like that's the thing. It's like they were 10th. It was just a trio, like you said. That's the difference. It's just one guy versus a trio.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the questions for what Tennessee how good can Tennessee be this year was the defense, and can the defensive line play up to its hype, and find some answers in the secondary. I mean, they struck gold at corner with Jermon McCoy. The defensive line's played up to the hype. And then it was largely, the offensive line and Nico. And Nico has been good, but hasn't been elite. And just, telling me those rushing numbers wouldn't have answered that question for me, wouldn't have answered the questions about the passing game. So, yeah, your assessment on Dont'e Thornton being the X factor, I think that's completely true, because obviously just the week-to-week unknown, it feels like, with this Tennessee team is its passing offense. And he just hasn't. Thornton just brings kind of an element to it, or a juice to it, that really no other pass catchers have.
So I was doing some digging, and some of the stuff I was writing about this week is like, so how many games would you guess Tennessee's receivers this season average less than 10 yards per reception in a game? Which games?
Arkansas, Oklahoma.
Not Oklahoma.
Not Oklahoma. Really, they threw so many of their screen passes against Oklahoma.
Yeah, Dont'e Thornton.
I guess you got the 70-yard touchdown from Thornton. Probably takes that away.
Yep. What does that game look like without Dont'e Thornton's big play?
Yeah. No, it's true. I'll say Georgia, because they didn't have any big pass plays. Really, that's what the question's become. When did they have the big pass plays? Florida, I don't think they had big pass plays in that game. Unless
they were over 10 in Florida.
They were over 10 in Florida.
And over 10 against Alabama. Which, I mean, it's just
Alabama,
tell you what
Alabama for sure. So I'll say Arkansas, Georgia, and Kentucky, I guess.
Nope. It's just Arkansas and Georgia.
No.
Those are their only 2 losses, and it's the only 2 games the receivers did not average more than 10 yards per reception. I understand the Dylan Sampson and the running game stuff this season. And it's why I answered that question to Matt the way I did last night, is Tennessee is going to be able to run the football. Like, Tennessee has been elite at running the football the last 4 years. The difference between Tennessee winning in Athens, Tennessee winning these tight games on the road in the SEC, is the explosive plays. They had no explosive plays against Georgia. They had 140-ish yard explosive play against Arkansas. They can't win. Like, if you're going to lose the time possession battle, if you are going to be in one of these low-scoring dogfights, what separates Tennessee on the road is those big plays. Like, Tennessee was chunking LSU to death in Death Valley in 2022 on the road. Like, the way Tennessee is going to win these big games, come college football playoff time, they'd be at Columbus. We'll find out tomorrow in that first round, or they get Columbus here, or they get the Buckeyes in Knoxville. Either way, Tennessee is going to have to commit. They are going to have to connect on chunk plays. It's just, and the only person this season that you can realistically look to week over week to connect on chunk plays is Dont'e Thornton. Like, Nico Iamaleava had his best 4 quarters of a football game this season, which is a great spot to be in, is that Nico is playing his best ball right before the college football playoff. That's incredibly important. He was efficient. He ran the ball well, which we should throw out. Like, Nico, That's another level of his game. Like, Nico, the stock is rising, and this is another part of it, is guess how many of the Power 2 schools have an underclassman who will be their quarterback in the college football playoff outside of Tennessee?
Outside of Tennessee, doing a quick run through, I'm guessing 0. None come to mind
0
for the Power 2.
It's only Nico. Nico is the only underclassman who will be starting a college football playoff game for one of the Power 2 schools. Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, Indiana, Georgia, Texas, and even Alabama now, with their odds shifting heavily overnight with Jalen Milroe.
I guess South
Nico,
Carolina, if they get in, they'd be in the
but
same boat.
yeah, but if it like, I just don't think it's like, I don't think South Carolina's gonna get in. But either way, like, it's going to be Miami. If it's Miami, guess what? Cam Ward. Like, this is uncharted waters here. Like, Nico is kind of ahead of schedule and had a lot on his plate. That a lot of guys have not. Look at the season Jackson Arnold's had. Look at the season that a lot of guys around him have had. Nico is improved, and Nico's calmed a lot of those worries, and I think he deserves a lot of credit for how well he played in this game, even with it being Vanderbilt. But there was still a lot of pressure here. Like, this was a big pressure cooker that he looked totally calm. Like, Nico was just calm, collected, and I think now we're actually maybe taking it for granted a little bit, is that Nico did not panic, 14-0 down. He did not panic after the interception. He ran the ball really well. I think Nico has turned the corner in a lot of ways. And we talked about it. Like, his last 20 quarters of football have been really good as a whole. So I think Nico is rounding into form. And I think next year it's going to be really good for Nico. We'll see what the offensive line looks like. There's still a whole offseason to get through. But I think the stock's rising on Nico. But to put a bow on it, the numbers don't lie with Thornton and this passing game. When Tennessee's receivers are not making plays and not raising the yards per reception, Tennessee loses. And when they do, when they have 14 point something that they had against Vanderbilt, they're going to win those games because the defense is that good. They run the ball really well, so they can play keep away if they want to. They can get first downs on the ground. They don't really turn the ball over that much. They play really good special teams outside of Boo Carter, who had a rough night against Vanderbilt on special teams, but he's still learning. Tennessee's a really, really tough out when Dont'e Thornton is clicking and that Nico's able to find him a couple times a game. Like, that's the difference between, I think, Tennessee having a deep run or being the first team, being one and done. I really think it comes down to Dont'e Thornton and Nico's connection.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, it's just a chunk plays because that's the key for the offense. Yeah. And Thornton is the guy there. And look, I think that's a really good point about Nico deserving a lot of credit for how he played in this game and responded to some early adversity, both from people around him not playing well on Tennessee's team and then himself making a mistake with the interception when at a point in the game where it felt like Tennessee had kind of just grabbed the momentum really for the first time. So I think that's fair. I would say the one thing, I want to see Tennessee hit the over the top chunk plays. And that's where I say how much of it's Tennessee, how much of it's Vanderbilt. Look, I just don't know that the slant routes to take him 70 yards are going to be there against Ohio State, against Penn State, Notre Dame, yada, 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 whoever Tennessee's going to play in the playoffs. I think they're going to have to hit some of those balls over the top, which, the plays haven't been there as often. Nico hasn't been quite as consistent on them, even in the last handful of games when he's played well. That would be my curiosity. I wouldn't even call it pushback. That would just be my curiosity. And you're right, Thornton's the only one that feels like can get open. Occasionally they scheme it up well for Squirrel to get open down the seam. And he was, I don't know if you could tell on the TV broadcast. I guess Tennessee's opening drive of the second half, he was wide open on one when Nico was kind of rolling left, and then Nico, had to evade a defender and made a nice play running. So it wasn't Nico's fault or anything. But so that would be my curiosity. Look, I would tone down the question of Tennessee winning a first round playoff game, and I know this is very simplistic. I think Tennessee will win a first-round playoff game if they play at Neyland Stadium, and if they go on the road, they're not going to. Like, there's not a whole lot of evidence towards Tennessee winning big games on the road, and there's a whole lot of evidence towards them winning a lot of big games at home. And I know that's simplistic. I know the next 3 weeks, really 2 weeks, I guess, once we know on Sunday, we'll dive into a lot more details about the game, and we'll talk about all the keys. And I 100% agree creating chunk plays will be one of them. But to me, when I think of, all right, what's the biggest key for Tennessee to get by the first game? Them getting a good draw and being at home is number one for me.
It is, but what's funny is, like, I think Ohio State's the ultimate. Like, if it's at Ohio State, I don't think that's a good situation for Tennessee. In Knoxville, like you said, I'll take Tennessee just about anybody at home among the potential options for a first-round playoff game. But I think at Riley Leonard in Notre Dame Stadium doesn't really scare me. I think Nico will be fine there. I think Tennessee could absolutely, if Northern Illinois can go into South Bend and win, I think Tennessee has a shot there. That's who I would probably want the most if it was a road game, is going to South Bend. I think that Tennessee.
I agree from an environment standpoint. I do want, Notre Dame secondary, I think, is the best of any of these groups, and their offensive line might be the best too. And I wonder about those two things from a pure matchup standpoint. But
Tennessee could beat them in the Oklahoma fashion, I think.
Yeah, Yeah, I think that's possible. I think it's just the way all the chaos is unfolded. I think it's unfolded in a very bad way for Tennessee. If I'm being honest, I think they're going to end up having to go play Ohio State the first game with the chance to go play Oregon in the second game, which means to me they're going to have the worst draw of any team in the entire field.
Well, it's the worst is that the way this committee put it together, where the 5 seed is the best seed in the tournament, like just great stuff all around. That the 5 seed's the best spot of anybody because you get to avoid the 1 for as long as possible. You can get the 5-12. So if you lose the Big 12 or Big 10 title game, if you're Ohio State, you still might get the 5 or Penn State, excuse me. You still probably get the 5 based on the rankings right now. And then you get 12 Arizona State or Boise State. And then you get the 4th rank. You might get Boise State and in the second round. Like the 5 seed's the best spot. The 5 seed's where you want to be.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's probably true. Look, the math would probably tell you that you'd still rather be the 1, but no.
I want the Big 12 and the Mountain West in my first 2 playoff games, which is how it shakes out right now.
What I think is different, or where it becomes a little more shaky, and look, I guess Penn State's not going to get to 1 even if they win. But if it's like a team like Penn State, I don't know if Penn State's really that good that where you can just sign up for having to play 2 games.
I think Penn State would be the 1 if they won.
You think they would be?
I think
you
so.
Think they jump Texas?
Yes.
I guess it. So to me, if you're Penn State, and look, maybe if they beat Oregon, they really are good enough. I'm almost like Penn State. I even against Arizona State.
Like I don't think they are the best team in the country, but I think they would have a pretty good case to usurp Texas and be the 1.
Yeah, and that's my thing is if you're Penn State, I'm not sure Penn State's good enough that you sign up for having to play the extra game. You probably do for your path of winning the national title, but I could see Penn State losing one of those 2 games. So you're right. I do think the parity this year and just the fact that there's not as many dominant teams makes it a little bit more shaky. But if I'm Texas, if I'm Oregon, I'm like, yeah, I'd probably rather be the 5 than the 1.
Yeah. Switching gears here a little bit. So should the Vols go after high dollar 5-star transfer Micah Hudson from Texas Tech here? Because we had the Evan Stewart buzz. Remember last year was like, oh, is Tennessee going to get? Because I think he had some kind of connection to Tennessee. If I'm not mistaken, there was some kind of family connection to Tennessee. But Micah Hudson enters the portal. There's a lot of talent already in the portal. I think this is the one that probably intrigues me the most is that with Dont'e Thornton being gone, with Brim McCoy moving on, we'll see what happens with Squirrel. We'll see what happens with Brazel. You know where I stand on fellow Parkview alum Mike Matthews. Braylon Staley right there. Chaz Nimrod, Caleb Webb, both could be back. Squirrel could be back. So it's not that there will be some depth, but they're losing some top-end guys. You're going to lose your best receiver, as we've talked about on this very program ad nauseum. I don't hate, because they didn't go in the Damian Martinez stuff, which I think they proved to be right on. They didn't need a Judkins. They don't need to go heavy into portal dollars for running back. We'll see on offensive tackle. It depends on what happens with David Sanders here and they'll get some guys in the interior, but you have William Satterwhite there, so it doesn't seem like you have to go and get a center. Spend big there. You obviously don't need a quarterback in the portal. I think that's the one spot. Like, if you can go in and get a 5-star transfer and someone as talented as Micah Hudson, man, I just kind of think you have to do it. I think you kind of have to get in that game. I mean, LSU's got their guys. Georgia's definitely going big game hunting there. Alabama's obviously got Ryan Williams, Cam Coleman at Auburn, Caleb Cunningham, now the 5-star committed to Ole Miss. There's a lot of premium outside playmaker, skill position talent entering this conference going into next year, and some who've already been here and burst onto the scene. But I think 2 things could be true. I think you could still be excited and roll with Braylon Staley and Travis Smith and the guys who are coming in, Mike Matthews, obviously. But Dont'e Thornton, like we talked about, he's your best player, and Chris Brazel has not shown you enough this year to be like, yeah, year 2, he'll break out and he'll be our most consistent big play guy down the field. Like, I think it's just a little bit different. I think you need to make a big time splash, I think, at wide receiver. I think you do need to, it doesn't necessarily have to be Micah Hudson, but he's the one who I have circled the most of like, I think it makes the most sense. Tennessee makes a lot of sense to me for Micah Hudson, and they've had success going after Texas guys before, like at Texas Home State. Like obviously, Jermon McCoy is a Texas guy. They get him from Texas A&M. Chris Brazel's a Texas guy. Tennessee's, I mean, I think Max Anderson, Texas guy. Bennett Warren, Texas guy. Like there's a lot of Texas guys in this roster, so it wouldn't be crazy to see if they were able to jump in there. But to me, Ryan Schumpert, that's the one. If I'm thinking offensively, where Tennessee needs to go with the portal opening up here, it's going after a blue chip wide receiver and not one of those kind of question marks like G5 to P5 upside like a Chris Brazel or a Dont'e Thornton who came in from Oregon without a lot of production, but still not the same pedigree as like a Micah Hudson. I think they need to take a big swing on somebody like that because of what they're losing.
Yeah, I mean, you said it a couple minutes ago that you got to feel really good about Nico going into year 2, and like, let's not sugarcoat it here. If you're going to feel great about Nico going into year 2 and the Tennessee's offense and the pass game getting back on track, the receivers got to get a whole lot better than they were this year, in my opinion. And I completely agree. There's other positions in the portal you're going to go after. The one you got to spend big on, to me, is at receiver, and no more, kind of pussyfooting it of, I don't know if let's go, we need a body, but let's not spend a ton on a stud. I think this is the time you kind of go all in on a stud and go all in on a sure thing. To me, Micah Hudson's not that. Maybe they evaluate it and see it that way. Look, I certainly have not grinded the tape. I saw 45 minutes ago that we were talking about Micah Hudson on this podcast. So I'm not grinding the tape. I thought you were going to say I saw 45 minutes of Micah Hudson tape, and I was like, I love that. That's what makes Ryan Schumpert different. He put in an hour nearly of Micah Hudson tape. I'll tell you exactly, for the people watching the podcast, here's how much time I spent watching the Micah Hudson tape. So look, maybe there is a lot there that I don't know. I'm strictly stat watching right now, and his stats are like 8 catches for 120 yards this season. So I would want to go after, you said it, go after a more known commodity. That's what I would think. I don't know who else is going to end up being out there in the portal. Obviously, he's a really talented guy. The upside of him being at Tennessee for multiple years, in a system where it feels like it takes a year or two for receivers to kind of get their feet wet, I would get all that. I would get why that would be someone you'd go after. But again, for thinking Tennessee needs an instant impact guy for next year, I don't really think Micah Hudson's the best way to go.
I don't know, man. He was the number 5 wide receiver prospect, 25 nationally on 247. Who he was reminded of from Gabe Brooks in January 2024. First round projection, Garrett Wilson. Dynamic, high volume playmaker who can play outside or in the slot. Lean, athletic build with sneaky strength. Highly productive high school receiver. Big play punch at running back. Oh, he plays some running back. But this is the best part. Vertical field stretcher with very good initial burst that also aids in the run after catch threat. That right there. That sentence is what Tennessee needs. Like, that is all Tennessee really needs out wide. Like, the other stuff is fine. The screen stuff, the blocking stuff, like, that is it. Like, we've seen it. Like, that is the thing. That is the one skill set. If you want to push this Tennessee offense over the top, what they described out of high school for Micah Hudson is exactly what Tennessee needs to thrive. Vertical field stretcher with very good initial burst that also aids in the run after catch. That's what they have to have. Like, that's what they haven't had all year outside of Dont'e Thornton. Like, that is the difference with breaking through and having guys like Ryan Williams and Cam Coleman and Caleb Cunningham coming in here. Like, you just need one of those guys. And I understand you're worried about the production at Texas Tech, but
Ryan Williams says 800 yards this season as a true freshman. This dude doesn't have 18.
It's fine.
Like, he doesn't have 1,800 or he doesn't have 180.
I'm willing to give him a mulligan this year, Ryan Schumpert. At Texas Tech. He is a big, I just don't think you're going to see as many just like guys who have been extremely productive in the Power 2 that are going, like the Concepcion, the slot guy from NC State. Like, that's fine, but he still doesn't really move the needle. And again, not really what Tennessee does offensively. It just doesn't seem like a natural fit. I want someone on the outside who is fast after the catch and just excels vertically. Like, that is what Tennessee needs more than anything to replace Dont'e Thornton, because that should be priority one this offseason, is making sure you have a Dont'e Thornton replacement ready to go. Not a question mark there. You need to be certain who is going to be our yak guy.
He would be a question mark. That's where your two things are not they're not compatible. Like, you can 100% sell me on Hudson. 100%. You can sell me on him. Good player, going to be a good player at Tennessee. You cannot tell me priority one is for this not to be a question mark in the offseason, to know you have a guy that can do what Dont'e Thornton did and hopefully do it on a lot more snaps. You can't say that that's priority one and then tell me this guy's the answer, because it's not going to answer the question. It's not a for sure thing. Look, you can sell me on him being a really good player at Tennessee. I'm just saying, if Micah Hudson's the answer and he's the guy that's going to start opposite of Mike Matthews or Chris Brazell or whoever next year, I'm going to go into the season with production at wide receiver as a question mark. And maybe what I'm asking is unrealistic. Maybe it is. I mean, you hit on it a second ago. Maybe I'm being unrealistic and thinking what Tennessee can get there. But to me, that will be a question mark if that's the answer. Not that he can't work out, but a question. Not a weakness, but a question.
But I think, to put a bow on it, we both agree. You cannot do the Brazel thing, the Thornton thing. You can't do a half measure here. Like, this offseason has to be a big investment in a ready-to-play. Like, no question, this guy is going to be a big playmaker option for Nico. Like, yep. It's going to be great if Mike also hits and Braylon Staley hits in the slot, or some of these other guys break out. Like, that's a plus. But you need a guaranteed thing, like in year 2 with Nico. Like, you just can't go into next year and have 3 straight years of just suboptimal wide receiver play. You just can't.
I agree. I mean, you look at Tennessee's schedule next year, that, we'll see what it looks like closer to, but
I mean, you're going to Gainesville and Tuscaloosa. You haven't won there yet.
Yep, and you got Georgia at home, who you haven't beaten, period.
Yep.
And, look, I think Tennessee will beat Oklahoma at home, but Oklahoma hired what seems to be a good offense coordinator today. I think that game Oklahoma looks a whole lot different, could potentially look a whole lot different than they did last year. Not that I think Tennessee's going to lose to Syracuse, but that maybe doesn't look like quite the buy that we thought it might be in the past. So Tennessee needs to be better offensively. I think it's I don't know if unrealistic is the right word. I don't think you can bank on Tennessee's defense being as good again next year. I think it will be good. I don't think there's going to be a massive drop-off. But to win some of those big-time games, the offense has to be better. And for the offense to be better, as we've been talking about, for the keys for Tennessee to have success in the playoffs, is to get the pass game back to what it was in 22 and 21 and being able to create a lot of chunk plays down the field.
Absolutely. CFP predictions, though. So where do you think now, call your shot right now, Ryan Schumpert, what do you think the committee does with Tennessee tomorrow and where Tennessee ultimately ends up?
Yeah, look, it's hard to predict what the committee is going to do because there's no rhyme or reason or logic. So I don't know what they will do. What I think should be the case, as much as people don't want to hear it, I think Tennessee should end up being the 9 seed and playing at Ohio State, or at least going on the road. I think Ohio
That's a doomsday scenario. Ohio State, I don't know how many times Ohio State's lost back-to-back home games, but I'm going to just go ahead and say it's probably pretty rare. I'm just going to go ahead and look up rare, is my guess.
For sure. I would rebuttal that and say, how many times has Ohio State played a college football playoff game at home? Even rarer. I think it's a different context. But yeah, no, I agree. Look, I just think I think Ohio State's got a better resume than Tennessee. So I think from that, they should be ahead of Tennessee. And I don't think the committee is going to punish Penn State or Georgia enough, or Texas enough, for losing in the conference championship game. They're going to drop them below Tennessee and make them go on the road in the playoffs. So you combine those two things, to me, it has Tennessee in the 9 spot. But I mean, the optimism, and if you want to, the argument against what I'm saying is that the committee has forever and always, it seems like, or maybe not forever and always, but very frequently valued what they've seen latest. They've been prisoners to recency bias, and if they're going to continue that theme, which they've done a ton, I can see how Tennessee would hop Ohio State. And it's not like, even though I don't think it's what should happen, it's not like there isn't any sort of precedent to say, all right, a team with a better resume is going to get jumped because they lost a game more recently, or someone else looked better more recently than they did.
That's fair. I'm going to say the committee puts Tennessee at 8. It's Tennessee 8 and
Ooh.
Ohio State 9. I think that's
Would
what's
be
going to happen.
awesome. Would be
Ward
I
Manuel.
mean, it's going to be a fun game either way, but it's specifically fun.
Ward Manuel putting Ohio State on the road in Neyland.
That would go. He won't for that very reason. And we already know he thinks Michigan's a good win for teams. So
that's what I'm saying. But he also might look at it as like,
loss.
Great win, but I'm also dropping you to a point where you now have to go to Neyland Stadium and win, where Josh Heupel has lost one time in the last 3 years.
I think for the conspiracy theories, he almost might go the opposite way to try to look like he's above board. And what I was saying a second ago is that he's already claimed that Michigan's a good win for Indiana.
Yeah.
So it's not a bad loss for Ohio State to lose at home to a team who's playing football like it's 1930 and can't complete a forward pass. How bad? I don't even know who the quarterback was playing for Michigan. Obviously, I was covering the Vanderbilt game at the same time. How bad was that interception he threw at the goal line the drive before they went down and kicked the game-winning field goal? That was, even for a walk-on quarterback, that was shocking.
Yeah, I don't know. Because like you said, Ward Manuel's just the figurehead. He's the one talking, so we don't know what those conversations are going on. So it's a bad job. Like, I feel bad for Ward being the one, because I would decline. If they were like, we need you to go out and talk about this week's rankings, I would say, I'm not going to do that. But good luck to whoever you find to do that.
I'm out.
Yeah, that is what I would do every week. It's like, hey, Chase, it's your turn to do this. And I would be like, hard pass, because like you said, like, he's having to explain what they're all doing and what they're all thinking. And I don't know. I think it's a tough job. I would not want that job that Ward's had the last couple of weeks, and whoever has it after him. Like, it just because like you said, we don't know what's going into it. We don't understand the transparency. We don't understand what the criteria actually is. And it just makes it all kind of messy. And every fan base is mad every single week. And Tennessee fans, if they're on the road, like, Tuesday night, it's going to be very interesting to see how fans look at Tennessee's placement. Because like you said, I'm in agreement where I would not... Tennessee needed Notre Dame or Penn State to lose. Yep. That is just... They had a lot of dominoes that worked in their favor. They needed one of them to lose. And it didn't happen. And I just think Ohio State, to your point, I do think they still have a better resume than Tennessee. And I think... it's one of those where I would not be upset, or I wouldn't think it's like a crazy thing to put Tennessee on the road in Ohio State. What I think is the crazy part is that Tennessee's like, that matchup just sucks, and the 5 seeds going to get these. Like, it sucks in terms of, like, we know that Ohio State's not like the 8th best team here, and they're going to free fall, and Tennessee is going to get one of the best teams in the country in the first round, and it's just a bad draw. Like, that's what sucks, is Tennessee's getting a bad draw here.
Well, it's what I think I said on here last week, or maybe it's the RTI podcast, where you want to get the home game, but you don't really want to be the 9, because being the 11 or the 10 or the 12, I guess not the 12, but the 11 or the 10 kind of sets you up in a decent little spot to make a run in this thing.
Yes,
because to me, 6 to 8 is all about the same, and then the possibility of playing the ACC or Big 12 or Boise State in the second round is significantly better than playing to 1. Well, now Tennessee's in the spot where they're going to have to be in the spot to play to 1 if they win the first game, and they're going to get what we think is one of the best teams in college football in the first game anyway, or at least the best of that 6 to 8 range in the second game. So you're right; it's kind of a disastrous draw. The only thing I would say that's positive about it, and this is if they're at home or away anyway, went away from the Rose Bowl, which would be really cool. It'd be one of the very cool things about the expanded playoff is Tennessee getting to play in the Rose Bowl.
What do you think the lines will be either way? Like, what do you think the line is if Tennessee goes to Columbus, and what do you think the line is if the Buckeyes come here?
I think if the game's in Columbus, it's Ohio State minus 7.5, and if it's in Knoxville, it's Ohio State minus 2.5.
I don't know if this makes any sense, but I think if it's in Ohio State, it's Ohio State minus like 11.5. And I think if it's here, I think it's Tennessee like minus 2.
See, I think we're off a little bit. We kind of both went too far, where I have it too narrow and you have it too wide, because it's probably like 7 points. The difference is probably how they judge it. I don't think Tennessee will be favored at home. I just don't think Tennessee will be favored with the way.
I think they're a double-digit dog if they go to Columbus.
I think that's completely fair. It wouldn't surprise me if it's more like Ohio State minus 10 or 9 in Columbus.
It's going to be like the Georgia
State
game
minus 2
to me.
Yes. Yeah. No, I think that's completely fair. Though I like Tennessee's chances more. Though, I mean, there'd be some parallels of like banged up Ohio State offensive line that isn't that great. Tennessee should be able to have a lot of success on the defensive front. Something we were saying going into the Georgia game. And then also facing off against a really talented
I just think
defense.
they have the kind of playmakers out wide and the kind of offense that will give Tennessee fits and crossers and everything else. I think it's, like you said, the offensive line's banged up, but I don't like that matchup for Tennessee. I don't think Ohio State on the road is good for Tennessee.
Well, I think, because I'm a real unprofessional here chewing on ice.
You did it. You were getting ready to talk, and you were like, "Let me put some ice in here."
Hold up.
Hold on.
I think it's a bad matchup.
Do you have any almonds?
I think Ohio State's really good. I think Ohio State's, the best of that group. So I think from that standpoint, it's a bad matchup. I don't know from a true, actual matchup standpoint, I feel that way. Because, I don't know. Will Howard doesn't strike a whole lot of fear.
I don't disagree. I think Will Howard could have easily a Graham Mertz versus Tennessee kind of game.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Here's the other big thing. Wait. Ryan Day's on the other sideline. Tennessee has that going for them.
I don't know. I think Ryan Day's a top 10 coach still. Like, I think Ryan Day's still a great coach. Yeah, 100%. 100%. I still think he is. I don't want any part of at Columbus and at Ohio State. I want no part of this.
And that's because Ohio State has the best money, the best roster money can buy. This has nothing to do with Ryan Day. I saw this.
He deserves credit. The offense
today.
is still good. Ryan Day and he hires well. Like, Ryan Day hires well. He hires Jim Knowles. He knows how to recruit. He hits, Ryan Day does a lot of stuff well. Like, Ryan Day deserves a lot of credit. Because, we've seen coaches who don't handle this well.
Ryan Day deserves a lot of credit. Chase Thomas, print it out, put it on the Ohio State message boards right now.
I'm a Ryan Day defender. I don't care. I don't care who knows it, Ryan. I don't care who knows it. Dawn of a new day.
I get what you're saying, and I almost do agree with it from the standpoint of it's like, who is Ohio State going to hire that you feel like way better about? But it's also the same way I feel about this is Mark Pope at Kentucky. Yeah, Mark Pope didn't recruit well at BYU. It's freaking Kentucky, and NIL is a thing. So many people would recruit well at Ohio State. Don't give me that. Like, everybody would recruit well at Ohio State. But
they all wouldn't win the same way. They all wouldn't win at the same level. They also all wouldn't hire the same way. They all may not give Jim Knowles.
I don't think these teams are going to have a lot of coaches. I think would have a whole lot of success winning the games that Ryan Day has with the roster they'd be able to put together. And
maybe. But I think he deserves a little bit more credit for being a CEO coach and knowing when he has to make moves. Like, he had the Brian Hartline year, and he's like, we're bringing in Chip Kelly. Oh, our defense was the problem. We're bringing in Chip Knowles from Oklahoma State. Like, I don't know. I just think he's a better CEO coach than people give him credit for. And I think, I don't know. I think you can do a whole lot worse than Ryan Day. And I think Ryan Day would win at a lot of places. I think Ryan Day would win at a lot of stops.
I'm not as sure on that one, Jim. The Will Howard CEO move to make the move to Will Howard. That hasn't done anything for him. Not that I think there's some huge difference. Like, they've downgraded, but they haven't upgraded significantly from Kyle McCord, in my opinion.
Kyle McCord's out here balling.
Yeah, he is. Post I saw today, verbal meme. It's not even a meme, but I think it was an Instagram comment, and it put it so well. Ryan Day is the Michael Jordan to James Franklin's.
What? We're too online. That is the most online. Oh my God.
But it hits. You might not like it because you're clearly a huge Ryan Day defender here.
I also think James Franklin's good.
To make the move. Yeah, James
Franklin's good. He's a top 10 coach too.
Yeah. He's solid.
One guy wins every year. Do people forget this? Like, one team wins.
Yes. Again, the support that Ryan Day has to put together the roster, and the roster he has, underachievement.
Well, look, I mean, look at Auburn.
Game
Ryan
management.
Harsin had that, and he had no idea how to do with the resources that he had at Auburn. And it was terrible.
What?
It went terrible. It's like, how do you
Chase
fumble?
on, chase
How do you
on
fumble
crack.
Auburn? I in the chat where I talk about it, where I'm like, how do you fumble Florida? It's not that it shouldn't be this complicated to make Florida good. It should not be this complicated for Miami to be good. It took too long there. But people do it. There are all kinds of coaches that come into great situations and recruiting hotbeds and high dollar programs, and they fumble it in a way that you're like, what are you doing? Ryan Day hasn't fumbled it. Ryan Day almost beat Georgia 2 years ago in the playoffs. Like, he was right there. Ryan Day had a much better Georgia team on the ropes. Terrible kick, and who knows if that kick goes in, who knows what that looks like.
Well, they played conservative, and he settled for that kick. So.
I mean, that's fine, but he had Georgia on the ropes. He was giving Kirby fits.
I think there is some fairness to this argument from you. Because you're right. It's not just a given that you'll be good at these schools. However, you lost all validity. Anybody that's listening probably still is siding against you because you compared the situation that Brian Harsin inherited at Auburn to the situation that Ryan Day inherited at Ohio State.
It's not even about inherited. I'm just saying it's a quick turn and burn. Like, Auburn should be good. Like, Auburn's a good situation. Like, you should be recruiting well.
Had every booster and power player at Auburn undermining him for 2 years, and Ryan Day has the best NIL support system in all of college football. How are we comparing these two things? Your overall point is fair, and This is me kind of, jumping on the one thing you said that was lunacy.
Lunacy.
I do think you make a decent point overall.
Well, now it was a good point like 20 seconds ago. Now it's down to decent. Ryan might be at a point where he's like, that was just I don't know what you're talking about. That was
it was a good point, but it has been docked down to decent for the first words out of your mouth making the comparison being Brian Harsin and Auburn.
Well, it is what it is. Week 4, Tennessee men's basketball is really good here. Number 1 in net, Ryan Schumpert. Top 2 in KenPom here. My question to you, as a college basketball connoisseur, does this feel like the best team in college basketball right now? And who would you take right now, like in a Auburn-Tennessee neutral matchup? How does Tennessee match up against the fellow SEC behemoth in Auburn right now?
I guess it's up to me to be negative again. No, it does not feel like number 1 team in the country to me. A good team, yes. A really good team, maybe even a fringe top 5 team, I would agree. I do think Auburn just, for once, a bad matchup against Tennessee. I mean, we talked about it last week. We talked about JP Estrella being out, and it was like Auburn's the example of a team where you're going to miss JP Estrella and being able to play big. And I was surprised Tennessee was 1 in the net over Auburn, just from the standpoint. I mean, Auburn's got 4 quad 1 wins, so that part I guess kind of confused me. I guess it was the nobody teams they've played have been worse because Tennessee's played a lot of quad 3, smaller games to this point in the season. So I would lean Auburn towards there in that matchup. But look, not by a ton. Like, I don't think Auburn's just night and day better than Tennessee, and I think Tennessee is certainly in that top group with a ton of teams. And I'm not sure there's any sort of runaway clear number 1 at this point in the season.
It just feels like they know who they are, and it's kind of like their ceiling's really high. And I was texting with the Tom Schilling group chat about this, where I'm like, I think Tennessee's ceiling's higher than it was a year ago, but I think their floor is way lower because they're just so thin. Like, when you go into this lower scholarship type of year, you don't fill those. You lose 2 guys to injury, one for over a month, 1 for the season. Like, it's dangerous. Like, if you can remain pretty healthy the rest of the way, you'll be okay, and you can get to where you want to go. Felix Okpara injury, I don't know what this team looks like. It can get dicey in a hurry in SEC play if you don't have Okpara for an extended period of time or anything. Obviously, ZZ is the most important and the engine that keeps this thing going, but they're deep in a way that, like, their rotation, their 8 to 9 guys are really, really strong, and they're all really good players. And it's the nice mixture between stars and role players, and they all have kind of different skills. And ZZ is just the engine that makes this all work. But I do think they're playing with fire a little bit, and it's just kind of Tennessee. If you're a fan, it kind of reminds me, in the NBA, as a big NBA guy here, Ryan Schumpert is a team that goes. It's kind of like a Daryl Morey team to me, where for my NBA hoop heads where they traded a bunch of assets and now you've got the stars, like the ceiling's high, but you don't have depth. You don't get to have depth and also a really high ceiling in the NBA. It's really hard to have both. So you kind of have to you get at a crossroads at a certain point where you're like, all right, like do we value our 10 to 11 man rotation, or do we trade 3 to 4 guys to bring in a bigger star? For Tennessee, they were like, well, we went all in. We got Chaz Lanier to replace the Dalton Connect production. We like the guys that we're bringing back, and we don't feel like we need to fill out the roster with just anybody. The rest of the way, we can be down a couple scholarships. And look, if we remain healthy, we can be better than we were a year ago. But if we're not, like, that's the kind of price you pay when year to year in this thing. So I just think it's a kind of gamble. It's a high upside, high risk, high reward gamble that I still just think that there's no way around it. Like, that's just going to be the case week in, week out for fans. It's like, I think they can win it. I think they can go to the Final Four this year. I also think that this season can unravel in a hurry, depending on one or two max injuries.
See, I understand what you're saying, but where I disagree is you can't play this game when they've already lost 2 guys.
Yeah.
You can't play they don't have enough depth. They're an injury or 2 away from being in trouble.
I said this before.
They've already have 2 guys injured. Yeah, but they already have 2 guys injured and they're fine right now. They have enough depth.
Like I said, it's an Akpara.
That's my point. You can't say you're down 2 guys, you're down one of your centers, and if you lose your other center, you're in trouble. Yeah, no crap. Who else in the country can lose their top 2 centers and it not be a significant drop off? Like that's where I just disagree with the logic of it. Like, sure, all that's right. And I think what you said that I completely agree with is this team knows who it is. Like, I think for to be this point in the year and the amount of transfers they brought in, and for all the roles to be this defined, not only for the key players, but even the bench guys. Like, it feels like Jordan Gainey knows who he is coming off the bench. It feels like Cade Phillips really knows who he is and what he does for this team coming off the bench. I think the only one you would say you're less sure on to some degree is D-Stone, and that's largely because he's was out of the fray for a couple weeks. So I completely agree with that element. I see what you're saying with the depth, but the fact that they're down 2 guys right now, and you're like, to me, the bigs, it's not fair, because if you lose Felix, you lose your first 2 bigs. If they lose the Kai, that's where I think it's completely fair to be critical, because they haven't recruited a backup point guard other than a true freshman in Bishop Boswell, who high on and what he can be for Tennessee going forward.
But he's not Kennedy Chandler. He's not someone who's stepping in and you're like, just not happening.
Yeah, he's exactly like that. I don't mean that's not supposed to be any sort of knock at Bishop or anything, but he's not a guy that's going to step in and it's just going to be seamless without him. So if Tennessee loses Zakai, from that aspect, I think your criticism is fair. Anywhere else, it's like they're already down 2 guys. They're already down. Yeah, if they lose Felix, they're in trouble, but they already lost their other center. So yeah, who wouldn't be in trouble if they lost their top 2 centers?
That's fair. Do you like the dark mode unis, by the way?
Yeah, they're solid.
What do you think Barnes thinks about them?
I think he likes them. Because and Grant Randy made the point to me today that back on the radio in like July with Josh and Swain, he said he had hinted that they're in the works. And part of one of the things you said, which I got such a kick out of, was I basically wear black every day, and it's true. If you ever see Rick Barnes, he wears the exact 2 fits for a man that makes whatever he does $5 million. He wears the exact 2 fits and they're either all black or all gray, and it's sweats, long sleeve shirt, vest on over the long sleeve shirt. So I think he likes them. I like the simplistic nature of it. My only thing is that I really like I love Tennessee's 3 other uniforms that they have been wearing, and I just like these. So I don't like having to, take away wearing those other ones to wear these uniforms that I just like. But we'll see. I want to see him in person too before I.
Do we think is this it, or do you think Smoky Grays come out too?
No, I don't think Smoky Grays come out. If it's the same Smoky Grays I used to have, I sure hope not. Those uniforms were hideous.
Can I say I kind of want the continuity? I kind of want just a Smoky Gray set, just because if the baseball and the football team's going to do it too, then the basketball team should show some continuity here.
I really hope not. Again, the blacks, like I'm not a alternate uniform fan, generally speaking, but the black uniforms just as whole, I think, look good, so I don't really have a problem with them wearing them. Some I just don't, and I know people do like the grays. I just don't like the grays. The first Smoky Grays, the first Nike Smoky Grays, they look fine. I don't love them, but they look fine. Everything they've done since, I think, looks pretty bad. and the basketball ones certainly that they were like 2 times, and in one game they got just destroyed by South Carolina in Rick's second year, and Rick said
I like the
no
2022 Smoky Grays. I like what they wore in LSU. I thought those looked
good. Those were the first Nike Smoky Grays.
Those look good.
Those are fine. I don't dislike them or anything. I see why people like them. It's still not quite my cup of tea, but I don't have any beef with those. I do have beef with them wearing the LSU game. We got robbed of what should have been a classic uniform matchup. LSU and their classic whites versus Tennessee and their orange jerseys and white pants. I mean, the 2010 game, I know people don't like watching that ending, but we see that ending every once in a while, and I always think, wow, those uniform combinations is beautiful. And both LSU and Tennessee didn't wear those uniforms, so that was disappointing.
I actually miss that Florida doesn't do the blue pants with the orange helmets in Knoxville, it feels like, or the orange pants with the orange helmets. I miss those road uniforms for Florida.
Is that not what Florida's worn the last 2 times in Knoxville?
I don't think so. Haven't it been white pants?
I think it's been blue. I think it's been blue pants, white jerseys, orange helmets.
Hold on. Tennessee 2022. Hold on. Maybe I'm just thinking of the orange pants. Okay, you're right. They did wear the blue pants. Why am I thinking they didn't?
I do think that's my favorite Florida uniform combination is the white jerseys, white pants, orange helmets. I think those look great.
Wait, you like white on white with the orange helmets?
Yeah, I do.
Terrible take.
I mean, I like the blues. I like the blues too, but I like the
also, I'm thinking of the orange pants, by the way.
Okay.
I don't know. I kind of like this. That's what I was looking at. And also, it's just the blue doesn't pop like it used to. Like, I'm looking at this T. Martin Javon Curse photo, and it's just the blue was a lot stronger back then.
It feels like they've kind of, and I guess this may be a theme, and this is probably going to be really unrelatable to people because most people haven't played many online dynasties in Madden drafting teams with the Buffalo Bills. It kind of reminds me of how the Bills uniforms had gone. I feel like the blue of the Florida uniforms in the 90s was similar to the blue in the Bills uniforms in the 90s, and it's kind of they've gotten like it's a little darker and it doesn't quite pop as much.
I think that's what I'm thinking. I think that's where my mind is at because it doesn't feel like the same blue. That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking Jabbar Gaffney, Javon Curse blue.
Yeah,
that's just not what
I think that's fair.
Ryan Schumpert, what can the good folks check out from you and the team over at RockyTopInsider.com this week?
Plenty of Tennessee basketball coverage for the game against Syracuse. Plenty of Tennessee football coverage when it comes to both the college football playoffs. New rankings will come out on Tuesday, and then obviously into the weekend when the things get real on Sunday, and we know for sure. And then National Signing Day coverage on Wednesday. Feels like a little bit more juice to the early signing period than we've had the last couple of years. So everything that happens, we'll have coverage of it. Apologies to the people who are listening. I know I got a little worked up and probably talked a little too loud while defending the depth of the Tennessee basketball team.
Whoa.
Yeah, no. That's what I got.
Never apologize, Ryan Schumpert. It's all like, no, we're not doing that. It's good content. It's good conversation here.
Yeah, I didn't apologize for yelling about the Brian Harsin thing because I will not. The quote Kramer.
The man's got his limits.
Cosmo Kramer. I cannot. I will not.
I respect it. I respect it. Ryan Schumpert, always a pleasure. The red Solo cup kills me. I don't even know how to close these with your red Solo cup of water. Ryan Schumpert, always a pleasure, and I'll talk to you next week.
Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas Podcast. Hell yeah.